Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the burned muffins in his oven. The smell of smoke filled his small bakery in downtown Portland, and he knew this batch was completely ruined. This was the third time this week that his baking had gone wrong, and he could not afford to waste any more ingredients. His bakery was barely making enough money to pay the rent, and every mistake cost him dearly. The bell above his front door rang, and Mrs. Henderson walked in with her usual frown. She was one of his regular customers, but she never seemed happy about anything. Jake forced a smile and walked to the counter to serve her. "Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. What can I get for you today?" Jake asked while trying to hide his frustration. "About the burned muffins. I want my usual chocolate croissants, but they better be fresh this time. Last week they tasted like they were sitting here for days," she complained while tapping her fingers on the counter. Jake felt his heart sink because he only had 2 chocolate croissants left from yesterday, and they were definitely not fresh. He had planned to make new ones this morning, but the muffin disaster had ruined his schedule. He looked at Mrs. Henderson and decided to be honest with her. "I am sorry, but I only have yesterday's croissants left. I can give you a discount, or you can come back this afternoon when I have fresh ones ready." Jake offered hopefully. Mrs. Henderson's face turned red with anger, and she started shouting about how his bakery was the worst in the city. She said she would never come back, and stormed out of the shop while slamming the door so hard that the bell fell to the floor. Jake stood there feeling defeated and wondering if he should just close the bakery for good. He walked to the back room and grabbed the tray of burned muffins. At least he could throw them away and start cleaning up the mess. Jake opened the back door that led to the small alley behind his bakery and stepped outside with a tray of ruined pastries. The alley was narrow and dirty with garbage, bins lined up against the brick walls. Jake usually tried to avoid spending time back here because it smelled bad, and rats sometimes ran around looking for food. He walked toward the dumpster and was about to throw the muffins away when he nearly tripped over something on the ground. Jake looked down and saw what appeared to be a pile of burned metal lying next to the wall. At first he thought it was just garbage that someone had thrown away, but as he looked closer, he realized it was shaped like an animal. The metal object had 4 legs and a long tail, and Jake suddenly understood that it looked like a cat. He set the tray of muffins on the ground and knelt down to get a better look at the strange metal cat. The surface was covered in scorch marks, and several pieces were hanging loose or missing completely. There were small lights on what looked like the head area, but they were flickering weakly like they might go out at any moment. Jake had never seen anything like this metal cat before, and he wondered where it had come from. It was clearly some kind of robot or machine, but it was much more advanced than anything he had ever seen on television or in movies. The design was sleek and beautiful, even though it was badly damaged. As Jake examined the robot cat more closely, he noticed that it was still warm, and he could hear faint humming sounds coming from inside its body. This meant that whatever powered this machine was still working, even though it looked like it had been through a terrible accident. Jake felt sorry for the damaged robot cat, just like he would feel sorry for any injured animal. He had always been the kind of person who could not ignore suffering, even when it belonged to a stray dog or cat. His mother used to say that Jake had too big a heart for his own good, and that he would try to help anyone or anything in need. The robot cat's lights flickered again, and Jake made a decision that would change his life forever. He carefully picked up the damaged machine and was surprised by how light it felt. The metal was warm to the touch, and he could feel gentle vibrations running through its body. Jake carried the robot cat into his bakery through the back door and placed it gently on the work table in his kitchen. He had no idea how to fix a robot, but he knew he had to try. The poor thing looked so helpless, lying there with its lights getting dimmer by the minute. He found some clean towels and began wiping away the dirt and debris from the robot's surface. As he cleaned, he could see that underneath all the damage, the metal cat was actually quite beautiful. Its body was made from some kind of copper-colored metal that seemed to shimmer even. In the dim light of his kitchen, Jake worked carefully around the loose wires and broken parts while trying not to cause any more damage. He had learned some basic electrical work from fixing his kitchen equipment over the years, and he hoped that knowledge might help him figure out how to help the robot. The hours passed quickly as Jake focused on his unexpected patient. He forgot all about his bakery troubles and his angry customer as he worked to clean and stabilize the damaged machine. For the first time in weeks, Jake felt like he was doing something important and meaningful. As the sun began to set, Jake noticed that the robot cat's lights had stopped flickering and seemed to be glowing more steadily. He had managed to reconnect several loose wires and clean away most of the debris, but he knew the machine still needed much more help than he could provide. Jake decided to leave the robot cat on his work table overnight and see how it looked. In the morning, he covered it with a clean towel and whispered goodnight, just like he used to do with his childhood pets. Tomorrow, he would figure out what to do next, but for now, he felt good about helping the strange metal creature that had somehow ended up in his alley. Jake woke up early the next morning and rushed to his bakery before sunrise. He had spent most of the night thinking about the strange robot cat and wondering if it would still be working when he got back. As he unlocked the back door and stepped into his kitchen, he could hardly believe what he saw. The robot cat was sitting upright on his work table, and its eyes were glowing with a bright blue light. When it saw Jake enter the room, it made a sound that was exactly like a real cat purring, but with a slight mechanical hum underneath. The robot stood up on its four legs and stretched, just like a normal cat would do after a long nap. Jake stood frozen in the doorway, not knowing what to say or do. He had hoped the robot would start working again, but he never expected it to act so much like a real living animal. The robot cat jumped down from the table and walked over to Jake while continuing to purr. "Thank you for helping me," the robot cat said in a clear voice that seemed to come from a small device on its collar. Jake nearly fell over in shock, because he had not expected the machine to be able to talk. He looked down at the robot cat and saw that its copper-colored metal body was now clean and shining. The damage was still visible, but somehow the machine looked much healthier than it had the night before. "You can talk," Jake said in amazement, while staring at the robot cat. "Yes, I can speak your language through my translation device. My name is Copper, and I am very grateful for your kindness," the robot replied while sitting down and wrapping its metal tail around its feet. Jake sat down on a chair because his legs felt weak from surprise. He had so many questions that he did not know where to start. The robot cat seemed to understand his confusion and began to explain without being asked. "I am not from your planet Earth. I come from a place very far away, and I was part of a team that was studying your world. My ship had problems and crashed somewhere outside your city. The other members of my team had to leave me behind because they thought I was too badly damaged to repair," Copper explained while his blue eyes dimmed slightly with sadness. Jake listened carefully as Copper told him about the Kalari Empire, which was a group of peaceful planets that worked together. The robot explained that his people had been watching Earth for many years, but had never made contact because they wanted to make sure humans were ready for such a big change. "Your people are not ready to know about us yet, but you showed me great kindness when you did not have to. This makes me believe that humans might be better than my leaders think," Copper said while looking directly at Jake. Jake felt overwhelmed by everything he was learning, but he also felt honored that this advanced robot trusted him enough to share such important secrets. He promised Copper that he would not tell anyone about their conversation, and that the robot could stay in his bakery as long as needed. Over the next few days, Jake and Copper developed an unusual friendship. The robot was fascinated by everything Jake did in his bakery and asked many questions about human food and cooking methods. Copper had advanced sensors that could analyze the chemical makeup of ingredients and detect flavors that humans could not even taste. Jake was amazed by how much Copper could teach him about baking. The robot could predict exactly how different ingredients would react with each other and suggest improvements to recipes that Jake had been using for years. When Jake followed Copper's advice, his baked goods turned out better than they ever had before. Your chocolate chip cookies are good, but if you add a small amount of sea salt and change the baking temperature by 3 degrees, they will be perfect, Copper suggested while watching. Jake tried the robot's suggestion and was shocked by how much better his cookies tasted. Customers began to notice the improvement in his baking and started coming back more often. Even Mrs. Henderson returned and admitted that his pastries were much better than before. As the weeks passed, Jake's bakery began to attract new customers who had heard about his amazing baked goods. People would drive from other parts of the city just to try his cakes and cookies. Jake had never experienced this kind of success before, and he knew it was all thanks to Copper's help. The robot cat spent most of his time in the kitchen with Jake, but he also enjoyed greeting customers in the front of the store. Most people assumed Copper was just an expensive toy or decoration, and they often commented on how realistic he looked. Jake would smile and agree while keeping the robot's true identity secret. Copper seemed to enjoy the attention from customers, and he would sometimes move or make sounds when people were not looking directly at him. This led to rumors that Jake's bakery was haunted or magical, which only brought in more curious customers. One evening after they had closed the bakery, Jake and Copper sat together in the kitchen, enjoying some leftover apple pie. Jake had grown so comfortable with his robot friend that he sometimes forgot Copper was not actually a real cat. "Jake, I need to tell you something important," Copper said in a serious tone that made Jake look up from his pie. "What is it?" Jake asked while wondering if something was wrong. "Other members of my people have been monitoring your bakery through my communication systems. They are very interested in what we have accomplished here together. Some of them want to come and taste your baking for themselves." Copper explained. Jake felt his heart start beating faster as he realized what this meant. The idea of meeting actual aliens was both exciting and terrifying at the same time. He wondered if he was ready for such a big responsibility, and what would happen if people found out. "Are you sure they will be safe here? What if someone sees them?" Jake asked with concern. "My people are very good at disguising themselves to look like humans. They will be careful, and they will only come a few at a time so as not to attract attention," Copper assured him. Jake thought about everything that had happened since he found Copper in the alley behind his bakery. His life had already changed in ways he never could have imagined, and now it seemed like even bigger changes were coming. He looked at his robot friend and realized that he trusted Copper completely. "Okay, but we need to be very careful about this. I do not want anything bad to happen to you or your people," Jake said with determination. Copper heard with happiness and gratitude as he realized that Jake was willing to help him once again. The first alien customer arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning when Jake was preparing his daily batch of cinnamon rolls. The bell above his door rang, and Jake looked up to see what appeared to be a normal middle-aged woman with brown hair and a friendly smile. She was wearing simple clothes and looked just like any other customer who might walk into his bakery. "Good morning. I heard you make wonderful pastries here," the woman said in perfect English while looking around the shop with obvious interest. Jake smiled and welcomed her while Copper watched carefully from his spot near the counter. The robot cat's eyes were glowing slightly brighter than usual, which Jake had learned meant Copper was excited or alert about something important. "Thank you for coming in. "What would you like to try today?" Jake asked while arranging some fresh croissants in the display case. The woman looked at all the different pastries with a kind of intense focus that Jake had never seen from a human customer. Her eyes seemed to examine every detail of his baked goods, as if she was trying to memorize everything she saw. "I would like to try one of everything you have available," she said without hesitation. Jake was surprised because this was an unusual request, but he was happy to serve such an enthusiastic customer. He began placing different pastries on a large tray, while the woman watched his every movement with fascination. As Jake worked, he noticed that the woman moved in a slightly odd way, and her skin seemed to have a faint shimmer that was barely noticeable, unless you looked very carefully. He remembered what Copper had told him about aliens being able to disguise themselves as humans, and he realized this must be one of them. The woman took her first bite of a blueberry muffin, and her eyes went wide with amazement. She made a small sound of pleasure and immediately took another larger bite. Jake watched as she tasted each pastry with the same intense reaction of delight and wonder. "These are incredible. I have never experienced anything like this before," she said while finishing a chocolate chip cookie in just 2 bites. Jake felt proud of his work, but he also felt nervous about having his first alien customer. He looked over at Copper, who was purring softly with what seemed like satisfaction and approval. After the woman finished eating, she thanked Jake repeatedly and paid for her food with cash. Before leaving, she asked when he would have fresh pastries available the next day, and Jake told her his usual schedule. She promised to return soon and left the bakery with a huge smile on her face. "That was one of my people," Copper confirmed after the woman was gone. "I thought so. She seemed different somehow, but I could not tell exactly how," Jake replied while cleaning up the empty plates. Over the next few weeks, more aliens began visiting Jake's bakery. Each one appeared to be human, but Jake learned to recognize the subtle signs that gave them away. They all moved with unusual grace, and their skin had that same faint shimmer. Most importantly, they all reacted to his baked goods with the same intense amazement and joy. Copper explained that human food was completely different from anything his people had ever tasted before. The combination of flavors and textures was fascinating to alien taste buds, and Jake's improved recipes were especially appealing to their advanced senses. Word about Jake's bakery began spreading through alien communication networks and more. Visitors started arriving each day. They came in small groups and were always very polite and careful not to attract attention from human customers. Jake learned to serve both humans and aliens at the same time without anyone noticing anything unusual. One morning, Jake was shocked when a woman in a military uniform walked into his bakery. She had short blonde hair and serious eyes that seemed to examine everything around her with professional attention. Jake could tell immediately that she was human and probably someone important. "Are you Jake Martinez, the owner of this establishment?" she asked in a formal tone while showing him an official-looking badge. "Yes, that is me." "Is there some kind of problem?" Jake replied while trying to stay calm, even though his heart was beating very fast. "My name is Commander Lisa Park from the United Earth Defense Force. We have been monitoring unusual activity in this area, and our sensors detected several unidentified individuals visiting your bakery repeatedly," she explained while looking around suspiciously. Jake felt panic rising in his chest as he realized that the military had discovered the alien visitors. He looked over at Copper, who was sitting very still and trying to look like a normal decorative object. The robot's eyes were dim, and he was not moving at all. Before Jake could answer Commander Park's questions, the bell rang again, and 3 people walked into the bakery together. They appeared to be normal humans, but Jake recognized them immediately as regular alien customers who came in every Tuesday for fresh donuts and coffee. Commander Park turned to look at the new customers, and Jake watched as her expression changed. From suspicion to confusion. The three aliens were talking and laughing together, just like any group of human friends might do. They greeted Jake with warm smiles and began looking at the pastries in his display case. "Good morning, Jake. Do you have any of those amazing apple turnovers today?" One of them asked, while the others nodded eagerly. Jake served the three aliens, while Commander Park watched everything carefully. She seemed to be looking for signs of something unusual, but the aliens were behaving exactly like normal human customers. They ordered their food, paid with cash, and sat down at a small table to eat, while chatting about everyday topics like the weather and local news. Commander Park stayed in the bakery for almost an hour watching the customers and examining every detail of Jake's operation. She tasted several different pastries and admitted they were exceptionally good, but she could not find any evidence of the unusual activity her sensors had detected. "Mr. Martinez, your bakery appears to be completely normal, and your customers seem like ordinary people. Perhaps our equipment detected something else in the area," she said before leaving. After Commander Park was gone, Jake felt both relieved and worried. He realized that having alien customers was becoming more dangerous than he had expected, and he wondered how long they could keep their secret safe. "We need to be more careful," Jake told Copper after all the customers had left for the day. "My people are aware of the risks, but they cannot stay away from your wonderful food. You have created something that brings great joy to beings from many different worlds," Copper replied with obvious admiration. Jake understood that his bakery had become something much more important than just a place to buy pastries. He was creating a bridge between humans and aliens through the simple act of sharing delicious food. The responsibility felt overwhelming, but also exciting as he realized he was playing a part in something much bigger than himself. 3 months after his first alien customer, Jake could hardly recognize his own bakery. What had once been a small, struggling shop was now the busiest place on the entire street. Lines of customers formed outside his door every morning, and he had to limit how many pastries each person could buy to make sure everyone got something. Jake had hired 2 new employees to help with the increased demand. Amy Chun was a talented baker who had worked at fancy restaurants before coming to help him. She adapted quickly to the unusual requirements of serving customers with very different dietary needs and preferences. The second new employee was Danny Rodriguez, who had appeared one day, claiming to be a food service consultant sent by the city government. Jake suspected that Danny was actually working for the military and keeping an eye on the bakery, but the man was helpful and friendly, so Jake did not mind having him around. Copper had explained that more alien species were starting to visit Earth specifically to try Jake's baking. Each species had different nutritional requirements and taste preferences, which meant Jake had to learn how to create pastries that could satisfy beings with completely different body chemistry than humans. The Zephyrians liked things that were very sweet and had bright colors. They would order dozens of Jake's rainbow cupcakes and eat them with obvious delight, while their shape-shifting abilities made them look like normal humans with perfect makeup and hair. The Thorak visitors preferred salty and spicy flavors that would be too intense for most human customers. Jake learned to make special versions of his bread and crackers with exotic spices that Copper helped him obtain through alien trade networks. The most challenging customers were the Vorthan, who required food with very specific mineral content to match their silicon-based biology. Jake had to completely redesign some of his recipes and use ingredients that he had never heard of before. Copper taught him about them, managing all these different requirements while still serving human customers was exhausting but also incredibly rewarding. Jake felt like he was learning about the universe in ways that no human had ever experienced before. Each new alien species taught him something different about cooking and flavor combinations. A bakery had to be expanded to include a special seating area, where alien customers could conduct business meetings while enjoying Jake's pastries. This section was separated from the main dining area by a decorative screen that allowed privacy for sensitive conversations. Jake often heard fragments of discussions about interstellar trade, agreements, and planetary defense treaties while he worked in the kitchen. It amazed him that beings from distant worlds were making important decisions while eating his chocolate chip cookies and drinking coffee. Commander Park had returned several times to investigate reports of unusual activity, but she never found any concrete evidence of alien presence. The visitors were too skilled at maintaining their human disguises, and they were always careful to avoid detection by Earth's primitive surveillance technology. Danny Rodriguez proved to be very helpful in managing the military's interest in the bakery. He would often step in to answer Commander Park's questions and redirect her attention away from the more sensitive customers. Jake began to suspect that Danny's real job was to protect the aliens rather than spy on them. One busy afternoon, Jake was working in the kitchen when Copper approached him with unusually bright eyes and excited movements. The robot cat had been spending more time lately communicating with his people through his built-in communication systems. "Jake, I have important news that will change everything," Copper announced, while jumping onto the work counter where Jake was mixing cake batter. "What kind of news?" Jake asked, while continuing to work, because he had learned that Copper often got excited about things that turned out to be minor. "The Great Assembly has decided to hold their annual meeting here at your bakery," Copper said, in a tone that made Jake stop mixing and look at him directly. "What is the Great Assembly?" Jake asked, even though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. Copper explained that the Great Assembly was a gathering of representatives from over 50 different alien civilizations. They met once each year to discuss important matters that affected the entire galaxy, including trade policies, territorial disputes, and scientific discoveries. They want to meet here because your bakery has become famous throughout the galaxy as a place where different species can come together peacefully. Many of the assembly members have already visited, and they all agree that your food creates a sense of harmony and cooperation. Copper continued. Jake felt dizzy as he realized what this meant. 50 different alien species would be coming to his small bakery for an official government meeting. The logistics alone seemed impossible, and he wondered how he could possibly provide food that would satisfy so many different dietary requirements. "When is this meeting supposed to happen?" Jake asked while sitting down on a chair because his legs felt weak. "In 6 weeks. The assembly leaders are sending advance teams to help with preparations and security. They want to make sure everything goes perfectly because this will be the first time humans are included in a galactic government meeting," Copper replied. Over the next few days, Jake met with alien representatives who appeared to be human, but spoke with the authority of interstellar diplomats. They explained that the meeting would include formal ceremonies, document signings, and cultural exchange activities. The biggest challenge was creating a special menu that could be enjoyed by all 50 species attending the meeting. Jake would need to design pastries and snacks that were nutritionally appropriate and delicious for beings with completely different biology and taste preferences. Amy and Danny worked with Jake to expand the kitchen and dining areas to accommodate the large number of expected guests. They installed special equipment for food preparation and storage, systems that could handle ingredients from dozens of different worlds. Copper served as the main liaison between Jake and the Assembly Planning Committee. The robot translated complex dietary requirements and cultural preferences into information that Jake could use to develop his menu. They worked together late into the night, testing new recipes and flavor combinations. Jake realized that his simple act of kindness in rescuing a damaged robot cat had led to the most important diplomatic event in human history. He felt both honored and terrified by the responsibility of hosting Representatives from civilizations that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years thought the success of the great assembly meeting would determine whether humans would be invited to join the galactic community or whether Earth would remain isolated for many more years. Jake understood that his baking skills might be the key to humanity's future among the stars. As the date of the meeting approached, Jake worked harder than he had ever worked in his life, but he also felt more excited than he had ever felt before. He was about to become the first human to officially host a gathering of alien governments, and he was determined to make it perfect. The morning of the great assembly meeting, Jake woke up before dawn with butterflies dancing in his stomach. Today would be the most important day in human history, and he was responsible for feeding representatives from 50 different alien civilizations. The weight of this responsibility felt heavier than anything he had ever experienced. Jake arrived at his bakery to find it completely transformed. Overnight, alien technicians had installed translation devices, comfortable seating arrangements for beings of various sizes and shapes, and security systems that were invisible but highly advanced. The small shop now looked like an elegant diplomatic meeting hall while still maintaining its cozy bakery atmosphere. Amy and Danny were already working in the expanded kitchen, preparing the special menu that Jake had spent weeks perfecting. Unity Cake sat in the center of the main display case, looking like a masterpiece of both culinary art and scientific achievement. Its multiple layers contained ingredients from dozens of different worlds and somehow managed to be beautiful despite its complex composition. Copper was stationed near the front door, wearing a special collar that identified him as an official diplomatic liaison. His metal body had been polished until it gleamed like precious jewelry, and his blue eyes glowed with pride and excitement. The first delegates began arriving at exactly 9 in the morning. They appeared to be humans wearing elegant formal clothing, but Jake could see the subtle signs that revealed their true nature. Some moved with the fluid grace of aquatic species, while others had the precise mechanical movements of beings who lived in high gravity environments. Each delegate was greeted personally by Jake, who had memorized the proper greeting customs for every species that would be attending. The Kalari representatives purred softly when he bowed in their traditional manner. The crystalline Nexari made musical chiming sounds when he offered them the hand gesture that showed respect in their culture. As more delegates arrived, Jake was amazed by how well his bakery accommodated beings who are so different from each other. The translation devices allowed perfect communication between species who had never been able to understand each other before. The carefully planned seating arrangements ensured that even beings with conflicting territorial instincts could sit peacefully in the same room. The morning session began with each delegate tasting samples from Jake's special menu. Jake watched nervously as beings with tentacles, multiple arms, crystalline bodies, and energy-based forms all tried his carefully crafted pastries. The room filled with sounds of pleasure and amazement as each species discovered flavors that appealed perfectly to their unique sensory systems. A representative from the gas giant worlds of the Ethereal Coalition made a speech about how Jake's baking had shown them that solid matter could create beauty and pleasure in ways they had never imagined. The silicon-based Vorthan delegate praised Jake for understanding their mineral dietary needs better than many of their own chefs. Jake felt tears forming in his eyes as he realized that his simple love of baking had somehow created a bridge between civilizations that had struggled to understand each other for centuries. Food had become a universal language that transcended the barriers of biology and culture. The formal diplomatic sessions began after lunch with delegates discussing trade agreements, scientific cooperation, and cultural exchange programs. Jake continued serving refreshments throughout the day, while listening to conversations about technologies and concepts that seemed like magic to his human understanding. The most important moment came when the delegates began debating whether to include Earth in their galactic community. Some species expressed concern about humanity's violent history and primitive technology. Others argued that humans showed potential for growth and cooperation. The debate continued for hours with delegates, citing historical examples and presenting scientific data about human behavior. Jake felt helpless as he listened to beings from advanced civilizations deciding the future of his entire planet based on their observations of human society. Finally, an ancient delegate from the wise one species stood up to address the assembly. This being appeared to be an elderly human woman, but Jake could sense an incredible depth of knowledge and experience that came from living for thousands of years. We have spent much time analyzing human civilization through distant observation and careful study. However, today we have experienced something that our research could never have revealed. This human, Jake Martinez, has shown us that your species possesses a gift for creating harmony and bringing different beings together through simple acts of kindness and generosity, she said while looking directly at Jake. The ancient delegate continued her speech by explaining how Jake's rescue of Copper had set in motion a chain of events that proved humanity's potential for positive contribution to galactic civilization. She pointed out that Jake had welcomed alien visitors without fear or prejudice and had worked tirelessly to accommodate their different needs and preferences. This bakery has become a place where beings from dozens of different worlds can gather peacefully and find common ground through shared appreciation of beautiful food. If one human can accomplish this, then perhaps humanity as a whole deserves the chance to join our community and contribute their unique perspective to our collective wisdom, she concluded. The final vote was unanimous in favor of including Earth in the galactic community. Jake watched in amazement as delegates from 50 different civilizations signed the historic Earth Inclusion Accord using a pen made from crystallized starlight that had been specially created for this moment. The ceremony concluded with everyone sharing pieces of Jake's Unity cake. As each delegate tasted the complex dessert, Jake could see expressions of wonder and satisfaction on faces that belonged to beings from across the galaxy. The cake somehow provided a perfect flavor experience for every species, while creating a sense of shared enjoyment that brought them all together. Commander Park appeared during the final celebrations, having been officially informed about the day's events by her government superiors. She congratulated Jake on his role in securing humanity's place among the stars, and apologized for not understanding sooner what was happening at his bakery. As the delegates prepared to leave, Jake felt exhausted, but also incredibly fulfilled. He had started the morning as a small-town baker and was ending it as an unofficial ambassador for his entire species. The responsibility still felt overwhelming, but he now knew that he had friends and allies throughout the galaxy who would help guide humanity through this incredible transition. Copper approached Jake as the last delegates were saying their goodbyes. The robot cat's eyes were glowing brighter than Jake had ever seen them, and his purring was so loud it sounded like a small engine. Jake, you have given me the greatest gift possible. You helped me find my true purpose, and you showed the galaxy that kindness and compassion are the most powerful forces in the universe. I will never forget what you have done for me and for all of our peoples, Copper said while nuzzling against Jake's hand. Jake looked around his transformed bakery and realized that his life would never be the same again. He was no longer just a baker, but a symbol of what humans could accomplish when they opened their hearts to others. The simple act of rescuing a damaged robot cat had changed not only his own destiny, but the destiny of his entire planet, and he knew that this was only the beginning of an incredible adventure that would take humanity to the stars.